What's up, world, and welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like here at the Real News Network. I'm Jared Ball here in Baltimore. On Wednesday the 23rd, the hip-hop world woke up to the news that the 5-footer who drank so much soda you could call him Dr. Pepper, but who never had a cavity and floated like gravity, had passed away due to complications stemming from a long battle with diabetes. Malik Isaac Taylor, Phife Dawg of A Tribe Called Quest, is dead at just 45. To try to make some sense of this and to offer some context are two leading journalists who cover hip-hop, art, and politics. Ericka Blount is an award-winning journalist, writer, editor, and professor who can be found at erickablount.com. She has also interviewed Earth, Wind & Fire's Maurice White, rest in peace, and Fidel Castro, among others who are making news recently. And also joining us is Davey D, a foremost authority on hip-hop media and longtime DJ, journalist, and co-host of Hard Knock Radio, which originates in the Bay but can be heard all over the country and world via Pacifica Radio. Welcome to you both. Thank you for joining us at I Mix What I Like in the Real News Network.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.
So, as I was saying to you off the air, I have to admit that the news of Phife's passing hit me harder than I might have expected. And I wanted to bring you all on to sort of contextualize this a little bit. Davey, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about who Phife was, his legacy, his importance to the game, and maybe, as I hope we can talk to a little bit about this condition we're faced with a lot of people in our generation are passing too early due to health complications inside and outside of hip hop.
Well, Phife Dawg is from Queens, St. Albans, Queens. And he was one of 4 members that made up the group Tribe Called Quest. Many people forget that this group came out in 1989, 1990. So they had a younger look, and their music is timeless. So many people mistakenly forget that these guys have been around for 20 plus years, 25 years or so. And that's a testament to how good they are and their ability to stay relevant. Phife Dawg, as an artist, if you think of most groups, there's always kind of like one lead rapper, and then there's a second one. But there's no Tribe Called Quest without Phife. Him and Q-Tip trade lyrics equally, in my opinion. I mean, Phife has so many standout rhymes that people will just say and reference, and you know, his presence is felt in a very big way as an artist. And so, you know, without Tribe, it ain't going to be a situation where you could just kind of go on without him.
Right.
That's the end. In terms of music, I think their claim to fame is that they opened up the genre of hip hop and let you know that there's a certain amount of musicality to it. In terms of, they were part of an era that we call the Afrocentric era. So they kind of came in with that whole vibe. A lot of jazz dominated their music. So you understood that hip hop wasn't just limited to drum beats and just somebody rapping, but you could actually make it a more complex composition. And then personally, Phife was somebody I've known for 20 plus years. And my fondest memories with him wasn't so much about him rapping or the shows that I seen him and Q-Tip and everybody perform at, but it had more to do with our conversations about sports. I mean, Phife was a sports fanatic, and his analysis and his understanding of the different sports and the players and the statistics, especially football, was unparalleled. And just to show you how dope he was as a sports person, he lived out here in the Bay Area where I'm at, in Oakland. He lived out in Antioch, which is outside of Oakland. He would frequently be on sports radio. He was somebody who called up, and there were several stations that were actually trying to get him to be a regular personality just on the sports tip, including us. We tried to get him to do sports for our show. And we come to find out there was another show. They were trying to get him. Then we found out there were other radio stations that were trying to get him. So Phife was definitely a sports guy, and just the conversations we had about football and him telling me my Raiders every year wasn't going to make it. And I'm looking at him, and he would give like this breakdown as to why. And, you want to argue with him, you'd be like, okay, man, you might be right. He was a diehard Jet fan. We could never convert him, even though he lived out here. So, that makes me smile, that he was a genuinely good guy. I mean,
There's
generally,
no question about that, Davey. In fact, the one time that I had the pleasure of meeting with him, it was clear he was a genuine good dude. We sat and talked for a long time, a lot about sports, like you just said. And I know for the same thing out here in the D.C. area, the sports radio affiliate that I'm most familiar with was trying to bring him around. And we heard him increasingly on the air as well. And when we did meet, he did the same thing, broke down all my sports teams, the Bullets at the time, even the Baltimore Orioles and the football team that I love, whose name shall not be mentioned on air. He knew everything about it, and he was a genuinely good dude. And everyone that I've ever heard talk about him who has met him has said the same thing. Ericka, let me bring you into the conversation and basically get the same response. What are your thoughts in the aftermath of this news, and maybe a little bit about the void that has been left now with this passing?
Yeah, I mean, Davey D broke it down in terms of, their impact on the music industry. I remember when they first came out in '89, I was a senior in high school, and my sister at the time was an intern at Jive. So I was getting all the music and, before anybody in the DC area anyway. And, they resonated with me on a number of levels. Obviously, just the music itself. My father's a big jazz head, so I knew a lot of the references in terms of samples and stuff. But also just, them and the Jungle Brothers and the whole Native Tongue crew were just like, they were just hot, like, musically, lyrically, in every way. And so, Phife, I wrote something recently for the Shadow League about, some of his clever lines, some of the best lines that he had. He was just a wordsmith. And, beyond that, too, as a person, he sort of represented for Tribe, kind of the everyman. He really resonated with streets. Like, he was the everyday dude, compared to, like, Q-Tip, who was a little more heady, a little more intellectual, a little, he had, I've had an edge that, everyday people, people that, I grew up in my neighborhood were all like, oh my God, texting me that past, just regular, street dude. So he had that element.
We only have a couple of minutes left, and I wanted to touch on something we were talking a little bit about off air. Davey, you were talking about this issue of people now paying tribute to Tribe Called Quest, who don't, radio personalities in particular, who don't often incorporate their music into their sets on a regular basis. And I wondered if there was a way to for instance, one of the biggest critiques I had of that Michael Rappaport documentary that came out about them a couple of years ago was that it didn't touch on enough of that era that you mentioned, Davey, coming out of the Afrocentric era, that golden age of hip hop, as it's is often referred to. And what I'm reminded of is that, the same thing I saw that did not happen in that documentary that Rappaport did is something that I hear you making a point about in terms of contemporary radio, that it doesn't incorporate groups from that era often enough, and it doesn't talk about the moment that produced those groups, the era that the kind of political and cultural era that we were in at that time that produced Tribe and the Native Tongues and so many others as well, and the structure that doesn't allow for that moment to reoccur. Could you maybe say another word about that?
Well, I mean, there was a lot of things going on, but I think the most dominant thing was the fight to end apartheid. And we could do a whole show on the movements around that and the way hip hop was involved with that. You also had the height of the crack era. And one of the things about Tribe and the whole Native Tongue movement is that in many ways they were an opposition to that. If you were bombarded with imagery of the crack era and the damages around it, then Tribe and all those groups were a refreshment to that. And being out in the Bay Area, they were played on our station all the time, and they stayed in rotation. They were probably among our first summer jam acts. We were the first ones to do that. We played, a lot of their songs were always in rotation. And as a DJ, their stuff I play them all the time at the clubs. So just to hear a lot of these big stations suddenly come up and they were like doing these tributes and they were like, oh, Tribe, they made my life. They were talking about, how they grew up on Tribe and how they were the soundtrack to them when they were young adults, yet they never play them. And they don't play them now. They did the tribute on Wednesday, and we're back to business as usual. And for me, that's kind of whack. It's exploitative, and they don't really do justice. I'll close by saying this. When you contrast that with, say, other genres of music, and I was just on a radio station out here, it was a rock station, and that was doing a tribute to Tribe. They were talking about that, Metallica and all those groups that have been around for ages are always in rotation with the new groups that are here. But when it comes to urban and black stations, we discard them. And so we did a tribute for Tribe. You heard the tributes for Tribe, but you didn't hear the tributes for Earth, Wind, and Fire when we lost Maurice White, just a month and a half ago. So that just shows you where the state of some of these people who have access to the masses and who speak to our community all across the country are. This is not about them and their legacy. This is about ratings. And for me, Tribe was a foundation for a lot of what we know about hip hop, in this sense, that if you ask people what are their top 10 albums, you're going to have either Midnight Marauders or Low End Theory somewhere in that top 10.
Or both.
Or both. Very few people will not mention Tribe as being a top 10 group. And to me, to not have them be put forth and the whole movement that was around them, I think shortchanges us and leaves us with a cultural void. So that's just my opinion. I'll just say this, as a professor, I have students in my hip hop class who first heard of Tribe when they come to our class. Like, oh, I'd never heard this group. And so you got 19 and 20-year-olds. And so I would just caution people not to sleep on the fact that what we take for granted may be something very foreign to the people that we're supposed to be setting examples for.
No doubt. I had my two daughters performing the Check the Rhyme back and forth yesterday. You on point, hip all the time, Phife and back and forth, to try to introduce them as soon as possible because I realized I had been a little bit delinquent myself. Ericka, let me give you a chance to offer some concluding thoughts as you reflect on the loss of Phife and someone else you also knew a little bit, Maurice White as well.
I think both of the groups, Tribe and Earth, Wind, and Fire, like Davey was saying, just presented an alternate narrative to what we were getting on the news. I read somebody posted a status update about his quote, "I like them brown, yellow." What is it? I like them brown, yellow, Puerto Rican, and Haitian.
Names Phife Dawg from the Zulu Nation.
And she was like, I'm Haitian. And when he said that, like, that meant everything to me because, people at that time, were, making fun of Haitians or whatever. And, the narrative in the news was that Haiti was this place where, AIDS was a big, it was not a positive, narrative. So, they did things like that, or, Phife talked about where
Dinkins be my mayor, remember?
Yeah, he wanted Dinkins to be the mayor. Even the line about being a funky diabetic. I mean, bring, like people, Yeah. Well, look, I know we got to cut it short. I appreciate you both taking the time to help us pay a little bit of a tribute and commemoration to Phife. Thank you both very much, Davey D, Ericka Blount, for joining us here at Real News and I Mix What I Like. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us wherever you are. Again, I'm Jared Ball here in Baltimore, saying, as Fred Hampton used to say, to you we say peace if you're willing to fight for it. So peace, everybody. We'll catch you in the whirlwind.